From listener-powered KUOW in Seattle, welcome to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. We're getting right into the top story of the day, learning more now about the shooting at Seattle Center, which killed 3 people yesterday evening. Mayor Wilson and others just wrapped up speaking at a press conference. The victims who were killed were a 19-year-old man, a 56-year-old woman, and a 44-year-old man. At least 5 others were treated for injuries, including a 2-year-old boy. And I'm turning now to our front page segment, which we usually do every Monday morning. I sit down with another journalist to talk about the biggest news developing right now and how it affects the Pacific Northwest. Today's guest is Marcus Harrison Green, the founder of South Seattle Emerald and the host of the podcast In the Meanwhile. Marcus, you and I were talking this morning, and when you agreed to come on, I think you had no idea that we were going to be dealing with such major breaking news and tragedy in our community. I really thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Livia. Obviously, wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah, me too. So I want to play just a little bit of audio of what happened at this press conference. Again, just minutes ago, started about an hour ago, where we heard from the mayor. We also heard from Police Chief Sean Barnes, who really zeroed in on the story of the possible suspects here. We have one suspect in custody, one possibly that police are looking for, although Barnes also left open the possibility after a reporter question that a suspect actually is one of the deceased victims that passed away at the hospital last night. So police say they are still looking for tips, for clues. They want more information from the public. Again, like I said, the mayor said there is security camera footage that is being pulled, so we may get more then. Mm-hmm. But the facts that evolved, as the investigation went on and what we heard today is that this was at least one young person, a 15-year-old, involved. Right. And Barnes says that these were 2 individuals firing at each other is what investigators believe.
We have small groups that appear to be at odds with each other. And in our city, 0.01% of the population is connected to 52% of our shootings, most of which are young people. And I just reflect today on the issue of gun violence among our young people in this city and the fact that even amidst this historic drop in violent crime across the country and in Seattle, young people are still getting guns, Marcus. I mean, your reflection first on that news that it is a 15-year-old in custody.
I mean, as Casey said, my heart breaks. Earlier this morning, I was talking to folks who work in gun violence prevention in the South Seattle area. And, I don't want to repeat anything that's unverified other than just to say that, there were so many people who kept looking back and recounting some of the violence that has already happened involving young people in our city, including in January when, 2 Rainier Beach High School students were killed. And as they said before then, and as they said, I should say, the entire city's hearts should have broken at that moment too, right? And it was their thoughts and shared by many that, because this happened where it happened, meaning at this very public event at Seattle Center, it's getting national attention, right? There was a news alert and breaking news notification, from the New York Times. That didn't happen, right, in January 30th when the Rainier Beach High School students were shot. And so I would say this to the entirety of our city. No matter where something like this takes place and happens, our hearts should absolutely break. There should never be asymmetric compassion. We should hurt and have pain just the same at all times.
And it should be a wake-up call, no matter where this happens.
Yes.
Right? I mean, one of the things that the mayor and the police chief talked about today at this press conference was that they are on alert for retaliation and the way that this kind of violence can spread and can, be in some ways infectious.
Yeah, and particularly when you're dealing with young people who are highly emotional, their brains aren't fully developed, right? And aren't sort of rationally thinking. I mean, I think it can become inevitable, and it can also become inevitable in a country that has plenty of guns that are floating around. I, want to, put a disclaimer forward before I say this. I am on the board of directors at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. And And I would just say this, like, I understand that we are justifiably in this moment here in the city where we are collectively grieving, but I also have to zoom out a little bit and say, in some ways, it's inevitable that we were in a country where last year we on average, I think it was 1.5, mass shootings every day. And by mass shootings, I want to be clear that the definition is more than 4 people involved in a shooting. We averaged more than one a day in this country. And so the fact is that until we change our gun laws at the national level, I hate to say it, but because I don't want to sound defeatist, but it's going to be inevitable that we experience these things, whether it is in Seattle, whether it's in Sequim, Washington.
I didn't hear a lot today so far, and they didn't get into the details. The mayor talked about strategies to reduce gun violence, and specifically the flood of guns in our community.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a lot today so far on that. What I did hear, though, is community groups, violence interrupters, talking about root causes. The mayor said the Community Passageways is reaching out to affected families immediately. The group is also convening an emergency meeting to assess the danger of retaliation.
Right.
The priority is to help families stay safe, prevent future violence.
Yeah.
And, I just want to point out that there have been, again, just like this historic drop in violent crime, and yet young people are being shot and in some cases killed in our community. I mean, the January shooting of the Rainier Beach High students, a 15-year-old kid is being charged, and now he's 16, but at the time of the shooting was 15 when those murders took place.
As my mother said, even though it was two folks who were killed in that, there are 3 victims, and there are 3 lives that are prematurely, ended. Including, as you said, the young person who, for the most part, will probably may never see daylight again in terms of being incarcerated.
They're facing 2 counts of first-degree murder for that shooting. I'm just running through some of the reporting from this year involving young people in gun violence. In May, a 13-year-old boy was arrested in connection to a fatal shooting of a 17-year-old boy in Rainier Valley. That was reported as a accidental shooting, but just the fact that there was a gun present with 13 and 17-year-olds, that young person, the 13-year-old, the kid turned themselves in with family to the South Precinct. Then in June, a 15-year-old boy was injured in a drive-by shooting outside the Van Asselt Community Center in South Seattle. They were in the doorway of the community center when a sedan pulled up and fired. There was a 17-year-old boy injured in High Point, on June 25th in a shooting. A 15-year-old boy shot on Aurora Avenue in North Seattle on June 23rd. These are kids being involved in and victimized by gun violence. And I know that it's feels like we're in this depressing spiral, but if we don't wake up and address it, right, as you say, if we don't take these opportunities as a wake-up call for the community, this stuff spreads and it metastasizes.
Yeah, and I would wonder too, right? I think that we need to ask here, what are the conditions that these kids are growing up in? What are the class conditions as well, right? I mean, are these there's a reason, right, why this isn't happening in Laurelhurst. There's a reason why this isn't happening in Mercer Island, right? And I will say this: some of the narratives that I have already seen, come out of the shooting, that we need more robust and expansive policing and so forth. I would just caution people.
The police were on scene immediately.
Yeah.
They responded immediately.
Right, and that's why I would say, I would just caution people, right? We have a police force, to your point, that at least they are saying that they're responsive immediately. We had a police force that oversaw the, first homicide-free June, in at least reported homicide-free June for the first time in 56 years. And so what I would say is, if the budget is about to come up here with the city, and I think that we need to be very, very clear on what things we have identified that actually can halt and stop crime. And if it does end up being something that we can push towards improving the social conditions of these young people, as the actor Wendell Pierce often says, that it's jobs and opportunity and community that stop bullets. it's only police that respond to the shot of gunfire. And so I would say that I do hope we can have a very clear and sobering conversation about what actually stops gun violence.
Just to recap what we know so far, there is a 15-year-old in custody in relation to this shooting at the Seattle Center last night that took 3 lives. There was a possible 8th victim, injured victim that was mentioned at the press conference as well, just about an hour ago. That 15-year-old has been booked into the Judge Patricia H. Clark Children and Family Justice Center with first appearance at 1:30 today. There are community groups reaching out to the violence interrupters, reaching out to try to prevent retaliation, which was something that the chief really emphasized. And, this was described as group violence. We don't know if it was gang violence. That is something that is being investigated. It's also possible that one of the victims who died last night was a second shooter, but police say they still need tips. They are looking for more information about a possible second suspect in this case. Anyone with information is encouraged to call 206-233-5000. Again, 206-233-5000, and tips can be provided anonymously. We don't know much more about the motive,
right.
Much more about the suspect, and possibly after this first appearance, we will have more. I do want to talk a little bit about the conversation that kind of took over this press conference. Mm-hmm. Marcus Harrison Green is with me, by the way. You're listening to Soundside on KUOW, the founder of the South Seattle Emerald. Marcus, this press conference with the mayor and with the chief of police really kind of was dominated, the second half of it at least, by this conversation about the way emergency information was communicated to the public yesterday evening. So the
right.
shooting happens around 6, and then there was like a single tweet from the police department, mm-hmm. and the mayor puts out a statement at about 8:30. Mm-hmm. The mayor's statement said that there were 2 suspects in custody initially, and then that was corrected. That was not accurate. There was 1 suspect in custody.
Right.
And then the confirmation of the fact that there was a second suspect police were looking for didn't come until a press conference that was held around 11 p.m. last night, so 5 hours after the shooting started.
Right.
And reporters and some chatter on social media is really trying to zero in on this as a failure of the SPD or the mayor's office to get timely and accurate information out. I want to play Chief Barnes responding to one question about this, why it took so long for that information to get out. And Barnes was, I think both Barnes and the mayor were a little defensive.
We understand that people are angry. You should be. Everyone should be angry. But with that anger, you should also be asking yourself, what can I do to prevent this? We have to start partnering together. We have to start working together on this issue of gun violence and getting information out and providing opportunities for people so that things like this do not happen. If I had, really a crystal ball, it would be that we could work with our young people, work with our groups, and make sure that they understand that this is not the way to go. This incident affected a lot of people. Internally, people who visited our amazing city. We're just coming off a very successful event with the FIFA where we had no incidents, and to have something like this this weekend is definitely unacceptable.
So Barnes, there again, pivoting from the question about why it took so long to confirm the information, to talk, about the issue of gun violence, especially with young people. Reporters really peppered the mayor and the chief with questions about this communication issue. Here is Mayor Wilson fielding one of the last questions of the day.
My office put out a statement at 8:30, which again included an initial inaccuracy. So again, this speaks to the tension between providing information early and providing it accurately. So we, along with SPD, were trying to manage that tension, and we got information out to you all as soon as we possibly could.
So I don't know what you make of this. It seems like there's, I have 2 feelings about this. Listening, I'm like, reporters have deadlines, and sometimes they get frustrated with public officials simply because they don't
I've been there. Yeah.
Meet their timeline. Yeah, as a reporter, you've been there. But then there's also this issue of if there was somebody who was a suspect who was on the loose, we didn't hear about that until, confirmed until 11. What do you think about what's been that conversation?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do just want to say, for transparency reasons, my partner does work in the mayor's office, so I just want to give a full disclosure there.
They've had a long day, I assume, a long night.
Yes, I didn't get much sleep because my partner didn't get much sleep, and that's although we do keep things separate in terms of church and state, shall we say. No, I mean, that said, though, going back to your original question, I mean, I do think there needs to be some assessment or reevaluation of, to your point, timely communication that is also accurate. I mean, I understand the tension between, I do seriously do understand the tension between wanting to provide fast information and quickly, and then also wanting to provide information once it's verified. I say this as somebody who was scanning Reddit yesterday, and there was everything from unconfirmed reports that this was some, Islamic terrorist thing to other things that I don't even, other conjecture, quite frankly, that I don't even want to get into on the air.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that misinformation flying around initially.
And so I think, this is, unfortunately, this is the society we sort of lived in this, attention economy where like a lie can get around the world before the truth gets its shoes on. That said, I think it is up to our public officials to understand that this is the media environment they live in. And so even if it's something of, constantly saying this is all we know, every half hour on the hour, I think that might be better received than waiting.
Yeah. The other thing that was brought up at the press conference was this ongoing conversation about surveillance cameras, the CCTV cameras in Seattle. This is a pilot program that Mayor Harrell, before Wilson, was really gung-ho on. And then when Wilson took over, she kind of put the brakes on and said, we're not going to expand these cameras, which currently operate along Aurora, in the Central District, in the Chinatown International District and downtown. They were turned on as well around the stadiums during the World Cup, then turned off. There was an expansion planned that she has paused for now around Garfield High School and Capitol Hill's nightlife district. Now, a question at the press conference was, we heard yesterday that there were no footage of this event at a really, busy day at the Seattle Center. Why would there be no footage? What about you, delaying the cameras basically being implemented and trying to, I think, nail the mayor on that issue. And then the mayor surprised me, at least, by saying, we do believe there was footage and that there's going to be a chance to pull that footage and we might know more later. It is interesting that, this idea of public safety and cameras, it is kind of intrinsically going to be coming up again and again until the mayor, I think, probably makes a final decision on what she's going to do. What do you make of that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a conversation, quite frankly, that requires more nuance than I've seen in largely in the media.
Shocking.
It seems like it's been such a polarizing conversation, right, and topic. I remember the mayor doing a town hall Seattle, a town hall at Town Hall Seattle.
Yeah, with Florangela Davila, yeah.
Yes, the executive director and executive editor of The Emerald, shout out to her. That was very fiery and, most, I think, primarily had people on the side of get rid of all cameras. And then, you obviously have folks who are on the polar opposite. I think that there is...
Including the police department, who argues that it provides valued evidence.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think this is just more evidence that we need to have, again, very clear, nuanced conversations around this. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'll be honest with you, San Francisco, a city that we're often compared to, I want to say it was 3 years ago that they just, essentially put this up for referendum about their cameras. And I think it's 60% of the city that actually approved the cameras. I honestly think that if we did something like that here in Seattle, if there was a referendum, that people would probably go towards cameras.
Vote to support the cameras.
Yeah. And that said, I do wonder how much of that is because of the narrative that they hear, right? Of that these things do keep us safe. And so, I would go back to, I just think there needs to be a very nuanced conversation around this, and maybe it comes down to sort of the Solomon wisdom of let's meet down the middle. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, for now, we're in a holding pattern on those because there are a couple of audits that Mayor Wilson has, been waiting for more data. There's one from the NYU Policing Project on data privacy and safety. Another one that is in partnership with UPenn and Seattle's OIG that's focused on law enforcement outcomes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, may I bring up one thing?
Please.
Because what I've noticed, and grant you, I didn't get to hear all of the press conference because I was, commuting over here.
You're in transit. You're on your way.
Yeah. But I will say this. I wonder, it's your knowledge, did anybody bring up like gun control laws or that we need more gun control?
I didn't hear anybody speaking specifically about gun control, reporters or officials, but there was conversation about violence prevention strategies that, probably include issues around guns, but nothing specifically about,
You might be surprised, but the fewer guns in a community, like the fewer gun deaths happen, you know what I mean? Like, I know that is very novel. And so this is one thing. And again, I am on the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, but I am not talking for them. But this is one thing that I will say.
You speak for yourself,
Yes,
Marcus Harrison Green.
I often do, much to my chagrin. But our state law is RCW 9.41.290. It prohibits cities, right, from coming up with their own ability to, regulate guns in their own sort of municipality. And I think that is good as a floor, right? I don't believe that, that any city or municipality should be able to go below a certain floor when it comes to, state law. That said, I do believe that a city, particularly the most populous city in this state, should be able to have stricter gun laws than the state now currently allows. I'm a person who thinks, there should definitely be a floor, but I think that a city should be able to set its ceiling, particularly a city as populous as the city of Seattle, which has, quite frankly, different, unique challenges than any other city within our state.
Does that make a difference when it comes to, these young people, we talked about youth gun violence, they're not supposed to have the guns in the first place, right? Just the fact that they are teenagers and they have, they're possessing firearms, like, does a regulation at the city level change that?
I think so, right? I think in the sense of like, where did the kid, get the gun from? Did they potentially steal it from them? Were they like, was it purchased from the black market dealer? I think if we
more guns in circulation,
right,
is what you're saying.
Exactly. So thank you for eloquently putting that. Yeah, if we can, I should have taken that coffee that you asked me that you offered me earlier. But yeah, I think if we can stop that flow, right? If we are even dent that flow, so to speak, then we sort of stop this cycle of gun violence and these guns getting to these children.
Mm. We talk about root causes. By the way, my name's Libby Dankman. You're listening to Front Page on KUOW's Soundside. My guest on Front Page today is Marcus Harrison Green, the founder of the South Seattle Emerald. And we've been talking about this deadly shooting at Seattle Center yesterday evening that killed 3 people. A 15-year-old suspect is in custody with a first appearance scheduled today at 1:30. Police say there may be another suspect at large. They're looking for more tips. But I just want to pivot a little here, Marcus, because we talk about root causes, and we got a couple minutes left here. Mm-hmm. And there has been a big conversation going on at the city level about feeding kids.
I had noticed, Libby.
Yeah, about feeding kids at school. This was the top story, though, I thought we were going to be talking about, right? So really quick timeline here, just because it is a complicated issue. Back in April, Mayor Katie Wilson proposed funding free breakfast and lunch for all Seattle public school students. She wants the meals program to start in the fall. Currently, about half of the district has free meals. This would expand it to the whole district. And this would be paid for by the Families Education Preschool and Promise Levy that Seattle voters passed last year. And then in mid-July, council members Deanne Foster and Joy Hollingsworth sponsored an amendment on the mayor's plan. They wanted to push that start of the free meals program to next school year and to earmark some of that money instead for low-income families to get food on the weekends and during school breaks. They argue that there was an issue with fiscal sustainability because part of the free meals program would be funded by the millionaire's tax that might not be around after November if voters repeal it or if it fails a judicial challenge. Then on Wednesday of last week, the council voted to delay the start of the free meals program, creating that voucher program for low-income families for weekends and breaks. After the vote, though, the council got this huge backlash,
And it was, happening in media and on the left, in Seattle, social media. Critics were saying that the council members were basically adding hurdles and burdensome means testing between kids and the food that they need to learn. Then, less than a day later, the council does an about-face, seemingly, where council members Hollingsworth, Foster, and Strauss came out with a new plan where they would start the universal school meals this fall, after all, but the money would be pulled out of the city's general fund instead of the FEPP levy. Now, Mayor Wilson really doesn't like that. She's like, we already have a shortfall in the budget, basically slammed the council's new proposal once it was clear that they were going to get that money from the general fund. And she said, I asked the council to reconsider the fiscally responsible approach my office originally put forward. Basically, everybody says they want to feed kids in this city, but how to pay for that, when to feed kids, which kids to feed, that's become a big fight in the city. And I'm just curious because you brought this up as, an issue that does relate to the violence program, especially among young people in our community. Can you explain?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the predictors of violence happening in a community, many of them, do trace back to social conditions, so unstable housing, food insecurity, which in this case is, apropos of what we're talking about, right? I mean, these are children, right, who are still developing. Your brain develops, I believe, up until 25 years old. If you don't have, nutrients and you don't have, a good 3 square meals a day, it tends to halt to impact, some of the brain development, particularly around the amygdala in your brain, that essentially controls your reflexes and your instincts and so forth. And so
impulse control.
Impulse control. Correct. So thank you for fact checking me in real time.
We're here together. It's
been a long night. Anyhow. So I view this not only in the sense of affordability, right? I mean, we've had inflation rise in our city that has risen higher than in other areas of the country, but also when it comes to public safety, this is one of those sort of downstream approaches that could potentially help us not get to a point where a young person is picking up a gun and then enacting violence. I will just say this, we were kind of joking off air about, talking about some of the reality show drama around shows like Married at First Sight, which is its season is set in Seattle. But I mean, you talk about reality show drama. My goodness, I was talking to
between the council and the mayor.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody at Child Haven. Was speaking to me on a condition of anonymity, and they were like, this is just really bizarre, man. I mean, we go from everybody wants to feed kids. It seems like maybe we do have the money to do it, and then we all of a sudden we don't want to do it, or we don't want to do we want to delay it, but then less than 24 hours later it's on, but it's potentially indebting us more, and it's just kind of like I just don't understand why the mayor's office and the city council just can't
get on the same page.
This should be an easy win for the city, quite frankly.
Right. It indicates that really chilly relationship that we've heard about, that there's issues with them working together on what's supposed to be a co-equal situation. We're just out of time. Marcus Harrison Green, really thank you for being here to kind of thread a lot of these different issues in our city together. Founder of the South Seattle Emerald. And how can people follow your podcast or anything else, Marcus?
Yeah, they can check us out at inthemeanwhilepodcast.com, and you can always go to southseattleemerald.org for the Emerald.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.